And suspension of disbelief is super fun, but only as long as you can clearly tell the difference between belief and reality. Reality is real. Your beliefs are in your head.
Today, an oligarchy is taking shape in America of extreme wealth, power, and influence that literally threatens our entire democracy.
Criminal's passive bellwether program is control. It's like a Orwell Huxley double punch.
Hello all, welcome to my channel. Today I have a little bit of a different video for you. Now, pardon me if I sound a little unhinged and a little out of there. This is my quote-unquote schizo post, but it's gonna sound crazy, and I promise you, what I'm about to say, it's gonna sound really crazy. But just hear me out for a sec and just listen to what I have to say. Listen to the stories I'm gonna tell you and the evidence I'm gonna show you and the things that I'm gonna try to bring to your attention. Please just give me a chance. What I'm about to tell you today, it's more unbelievable, the fact that we got real UFO leaks from the government. You know, it's more unbelievable than the price of gas right now, which is insane, or even the stuff that we're seeing start to slowly come out of the redacted files. With all that being said, let me hop straight into it. So recently I've been playing Watch Dogs 2 again. Game came out in 2016. It's a very nostalgic game for me. I played it a couple years after it release, and you know, I was trying to figure out, you know, obviously the game warns you about the surveillance state and just kind of the concerns of giving too much power to a tech company, and you know, having this overreaching system that tracks and monitors all your information. You know, it's a concept that has been looked at a few times throughout time and whatnot. But what really stood out to me in this game, and what I think they were trying to warn us about 10 years ago, is something called the Bellwether program. Now, the Bellwether program, you don't really hear about it until you get in later in the game, but essentially what it is the best description is a behavioral prediction system. It is a program that uses a copious amounts of data. I mean data from everywhere, you know, odds, statistics, but also a lot of personal data, people's personal data, and it blends it together with these predictive algorithms. And it's essentially the most evil thing ever. They frame it in the game as not only something that could predict your next move accurately, but influence it as well. And you know, that's through a variety of different methods, like you know, posts that you see online, what's in the media, the news, different little things here and there. It almost feels subliminal, but it's just these random little things, but it's all by design, and it creates this pattern in the system to where it could sway people's minds and opinions, or to keep them looking at certain directions. And it's just like, it's really evil, right? And so they frame that as that, you know, that's one of the worst parts about the CTOS, which is the software in the game that is owned by basically the big bad evil, and they're trying to put on everyone, right? It's another layer of evil where it's not just surveillance, but it is in some forms actually a bit of control. And I saw that, I'm like, you know, that's kind of interesting. I'm like, I wonder if like anything like that exists today. And I can tell you that it's already happening. It's already here in some instances. And I'm not trying to fearmonger. I'm not trying to panic anyone. I'm showing you that this is what the game was really about, and this is what it really was trying to warn us about nearly a decade ago. So let's go back nearly a decade ago. Or actually, let's go back, my apologies. Let's go back a decade ago. Let's go back to 2016. So in 2016, it was quite literally a ruling made in December of 2016. So right before Obama was out, Donald Trump had already been elected as the next president. They were just kind of, you know how it is. There's always those couple months where, in the interim between the election and the inauguration of a new president, there's kind of those last couple of months. And that's usually where, like, things will just get passed, little things, big things. It's usually one of those kind of just busy seasons where they just put stuff out. And one of the rulings by the current, at the time, FCC commission was it's called Protecting the Privacy of Customers of Broadband and Other Telecommunication Services. And it was this basically big overarching rule about this consumer privacy and policies. And if you look at the European Union, I forget what it's called, but like they have an overarching internet privacy law, and also China. So this was our bill. Like, this was meant to protect our freedoms and our privacy concerns online. And one of the parts of that was that, your data couldn't be collected and sold off to other companies. So this passes December of 2016. This was like probably a few months before or after Watch Dogs came out. I forget when that came out specifically. Watch Dogs 2, I mean. But so this ruling gets made by the FCC December of 2016. So we had this overarching policy where you couldn't sell the data, and you're probably like, but they can sell your data. Well, you're correct, because 4 months later, in April of 2017, it goes into Congress, a specific clause or section be removed from the general policy, the overarching policy, and that was Chapter 8 of Title 5 of this ruling that the FCC had made. And this joint resolution that was aimed at it was called SJ Res 34. And it was a joint resolution that they were trying to get, Congress was essentially trying to say, hey, this one section in the thing, in this whole policy, we're removing that. We don't like it, we disagree with it, we want to get rid of it. This specific section was the section regarding collection policies and how it's sold and how it's transmitted. So 4 months after we get this ruling, barely any time at all, the government has gone back and basically said, no, your data is gone. New administration said, your data is gone. It can be bought and sold by other companies. Broadband people like internet companies, I think like Comcast and whatnot, like they can collect your data and sell it to people. And that's kind of where this all started snowballing. Because then you ask, so this resolution passed in 2017, it's 2026, with 9 years, Congress has essentially said, yeah, it's fine for this data, or Congress and the administration had said, yeah, it's fine that your data gets sold. So what happened there? Well, you know how all of those data centers have been springing up recently. You know how they have all this material to train AI. This is kind of where we start It's going to sound a little conspiratorial, but it's not. Where we're going with this is real. This is what's really going on. So ever since the data got greenlit to be sold, it's being bought up by a lot of these big companies, and now they've been using these data centers. In part, again, we've been complaining about, oh, data centers, they're stealing creativity, they're stealing books, they're stealing all this other knowledge. Well, one of the things that the data centers are also doing is harvesting information. Let me pose you a question. When you think about AI, what is the one thing that you see a lot with AI? What's like the primary function of AI? In the day-to-day world, what do most people use the AI to do? They ask it questions. And what does the AI do? It sorts through an insane amount of data, through numerous different sources, and it finds the answer, what it believes to be the answer, and it tries to find the answer that is most accurate to what you're asking it, and then it presents it to you. So the whole point is not necessarily to steal jobs or to rip off other people's creativity. It's to find answers. It is to sort through an insane amount of data, look through all these different places very quickly and be like, present an answer. And if this is starting to sound a little crackpot, I want to introduce you to Palantir. So Palantir, if you're not aware, it's a tech company. I think it got started. It's one of those Silicon Valley projects. I think it came out, started or co-founded in 2003 or 2004. And one of the co-founders was Peter Thiel. And I'm not sure if you know who Peter Thiel is, but he's the guy who, when he was asked the question, I forget the exact question, but it was basically, should humanity continue?
You would prefer the human race to endure, right? You're hesitating.
Yeah, well,
yes?
I don't know. I would.
This is a long hesitation. This is a long hesitation.
There's so many questions.
He struggled to answer the question, which would you think would be a very basic question, like, hey, should humanity keep going on? And he's sitting there, That is who co-founded this company called Palantir. And Palantir is in the business of not only data collection, but also AI. And their engines do a bunch of things for a lot of big corporations. I mean, like, I saw, I think Heineken was on there, which I think was a beer company. Like, there's a lot of people. Like, if you go to their website, you can see they work with a lot of major corporations. And on the website, their opening quote is, "Our software powers real-time AI-driven decisions in critical government and commercial enterprises in the West, from factory floors to the front lines." An AI software that is using a ton of data to sort through and then predict and give accurate responses for critical situations, including government entities. Sounds a little familiar to our fictional company, Bloom, and the software that they were trying to create, CTOS and the Bellwether program, where they're trying to create this predictive algorithm, right? Because AI wasn't really, we were familiar with the term artificial intelligence back then, but it wasn't AI today. It was not AI 10 years ago. It was more in line with like robots and the thinking capacities, like actual artificial intelligence, not the modern day LLMs, which are large language large learning models. AI today is more in line with sort through all this information, give me an answer that is accurate than actually thinking. Another fun fact about Peter Thiel, he is a part of this venture capitalist fund. I think he started it. I'll put the information on screen, you can see. But he started this venture capitalist fund called the Founders Fund. What did the Founders Fund heavily invest into? Give $275 million to, I believe. You know who they gave it to? Flock. And if you're not familiar with Flock, you look around your local city, you may have noticed there's just some extra cameras up. Usually, best place to look for them, look at them at intersections or other high traffic areas, and you'll just see them. It's a little box hangs off the one of the poles at the intersection. Doesn't look anything innocuous, and usually I believe it says Flock on the side or a little symbol. I'm like, well, what does Flock do? Well, Flock is one of those companies that has, these intersection cams, and one of the things that part of it is they partner with local law enforcement to not only do like speeding tickets, automatic speeding, red light tickets, but also if they see any flagged vehicles in the area, like for people who are wanted, or BOLO alerts, or Amber alerts, like their job is to look at license plates and just kind of track them throughout and track the patterns and the ways they move through the city. Which is all fine and good, except that, and I'm not going to say this is not what the company's doing as a whole, but there have already been several notable examples of people within these local police departments misusing the system to track people around their cities, to track their exes, to stalk people. And the software is very good at seeing where people go and figuring out where they are. Again, Peter Thiel does not necessarily have his hands in Flock, as he's not on the board or anything like that, but his venture fund is invested into it. And you know where Flock and Palantir have also been used recently? In the recent mass deportations by ICE, they have both been used by the DHS to locate people and figure out where they are. And the software is very good at figuring out where people are. We've seen it, right? We've seen the mass deportations. That's a fact. And part of that is due to this software, Palantir, being able to find information and make decisions and figure out where people, again, real time, AI driven, it's trying to make, it appears to me that it's trying to predict the most likely outcomes combined with Flock, which is very good at tracking your car through the city if it's flagged. Like, if they know that's what's going to. They're very good with finding the patterns and where you're likely to go to. And that's what's been so effective with the deportations, is they've just been able to find people like that. Another funny thing about Flock is they were recently going to partner with Ring. You know, the Ring camera system? They were going to partner with Ring, who's owned by Amazon, who's owned by Jeff Bezos. And Ring cameras, you've seen them, like the doorbell, they've got all those different options. They were going to partner because I also don't know if you saw, but the Super Bowl this year, Ring had a very interesting ad. An ad that they were going to put out as a, quote, neighborhood, I think it was like some sort of help program where basically they were going to turn the doorbell cams, which, are only supposed to active if there's motion or if someone pushes it. They were essentially going to turn the cameras into live feeds, not necessarily like you go in and stare at, they have a giant wall of monitors type of deal, but they were going to turn them into passive feeds that were going to always be running. And these passive feeds we're going to be able to enable, so like if you lost your dog or, you know, little Jimmy got lost, they were supposed to, it was marketed as neighbors helping neighbors in being able to track where people went. And it's kind of like, yeah, that's good and all, but that's going through Amazon. And so that means, you know, that falls into that umbrella. So that's, again, passive feeds. You don't know what can happen with that. And again, I'm not accusing anyone of anything, but the issue is we live in a reality where misuse happens, where people misuse things. They say, hey, let's give people this really great tool. And then they do something bad with it. It's kind of like someone going online, you know, the internet's a great thing. You can use the internet to do so much good stuff. But then you can also use the internet, and several people have, unfortunately, used that to plan like mass attacks, violence, to stalk people. And so it's a tool that, unfortunately, while it can do a lot of good, it can also be misused. And I feel that there's a lot of tools right now in the hands of people who may not necessarily have our best intentions in mind. And one of the things, I'm not alone in this. When that ad went live of, oh yeah, we're going to have this passive monitoring system, you can find your lost dog. Everyone looked at that, looked at the fact that, again, previously, I believe when I read in their article, I think it said December of 2025. So several months before, they'd already been trying to make an integration between Flock and Ring. Then Ring says, we're going to turn your camera into essentially one of the Flock cameras. And if someone reports something, then we can look through it. The same Flock who's also worked with the DHS. And 4 days after that ad, 4 days after the Super Bowl, they dropped something and they're just like, yeah, we just couldn't make it work. It looked like it was just going to be too difficult. Never mind the online just backlash Ring got for saying, we're going to turn you into a spy camera. And not everyone knew, but some people also put the connections that they were working with Flock. That's what I mean. That's what I mean with Palantir, with Flock, with Ring. These could be great tools, but they also are very powerful tools. And if they're in the hands of people who don't necessarily have our best intent or best interest at mind, I'm more inclined to believe that they will not necessarily be used for our benefit rather than for our downfall. And I don't mean like into society, but I just mean it can be used something good. Going back to AI, you also have to realize, you know, when we were in COVID, like 2020, 2021, AI was really cool. Like we were looking at AI and it looked very futuristic, and we're like, oh, it can help you with homework, and it can it can tell you things, and it can make art, and it was like a very like cool thing for a lot of people. And nowadays, a lot of people just hate it. Like the public hates it, you know. Facebook especially is just filled with a lot of AI slop. There's a lot of garbage online, a lot of trash music. YouTube. People making shorts on YouTube, the AI shorts where they steal shows and then they clip it and they put subtitles on. That kind of thing. AI has gotten to the point where, and I'm not saying people don't use AI occasionally once in a while. Like, I've been guilty of it. I do it. You know, I know some people who have done it. But no one, it's not like a few years ago where people were playing with it and whatnot. People nowadays, the average American just kind of use it as a tool once in a while. Hey, can you write me an email? Hey, can you make me a photo of this? But it's not a necessity in most people's lives. People aren't really using it like that. So, and some people are quite annoyed by it. They're annoyed by the slop. They're annoyed by the nonsense. They're annoyed at how much resources it uses. I mean, you got to think 2020, 2021, how many companies came out and pledged, said, we're gonna go green. We're gonna be better. I mean, that's why you don't usually get a charging brick anymore with your smartphone, because that was one of the green measures, right? Samsung, Apple, and now all of these companies have kind of folded back in on themselves with AI, and they're using it. They're making these huge data farms, which are terrible for the environment. They emit a lot of heat. Even if they recycle the water, it's still it poisons the water. And eventually that poisoned water will end up in the atmosphere. And so they're not good for us. It's not good to have a shit ton of data centers just everywhere using all this power, and the cost of power has gone up significantly. And yet, while more and more people every day are saying, hey man, I'm done with AI, I'm not using it, you've got all of these huge corporations and these millionaires and billionaires still investing heavy into it. And you're asking why? Why? Because, you would think people who know how to run a business, if the public doesn't want the business, you probably shouldn't, or if the public doesn't want the product, you probably shouldn't make it. And yet they are making a product that more and more, every day people are saying, you know what, we're over this, we're tired with it. Yeah, it's cool or whatever. I don't necessarily want it though. It's not really good for our environment. It's because they want to take that, and they're trying to build something like the Bellwether program. They're trying to build a great algorithm, a great prediction model. They are trying to build this into something that is scarily accurate and not only accurate, but can influence us. And if you're like, whoa, let me explain. Here's, again, where I'm gonna go a little bit off the rails and it sounds a little crazy, but you're just like, what, you mean they're trying to use these AIs to build a model that's strong enough to also influence us? Before you even say that that's crazy, look at Facebook, look at Instagram, TikTok. We talk mess about people who let their kids watch CoComelon because they'll just stare at it for hours. The kids will just be glued to their phones, and we talk about tablet kids all the time. We now live in a reality. You know how many grown adults I know, men who are older than I am, 3 times the age. Several of my older family members, people who I would never even think to be on these TikTok, especially, and they're just glued to their phone. They're as bad as me when I was younger, just staring at their phone, consuming the feed that they're getting them. And let me take you back to an era before the algorithm got so good. Let me take you back. Let's go back to 2016 again. A lot of people talk about the death of the monoculture. You remember the time where, early YouTube, from its inception to around 2016, where we all kind of watched the same YouTubers. Again, not all of them. I also understand there was less. But it was like there was more of a cohesion, we had different people interacting with each other, different sides of the internet crossing over. And it was kind of like we all were a little bit more in tune with the internet at that time. Then think about after 2016, we had the whole pipeline era, right? 2016 is around the time we start talking about pipelines. Oh, the alt-right pipeline, the far-left pipeline, the communist propaganda. And we started making these arguments of, oh, no, if you're going to go to this influencer, it's going to push you, right? And so people started to separate, move in different directions. And then we get to the 2020s, and there's bubbles. Oh, you're on this side of the internet, you're in this corner of the internet, there's these things. And now we're at a point now where everyone's feed has been perfectly tailored to them. Think about Instagram. For me, for instance, I don't go on Instagram a lot anymore. And that's because Instagram hits me like a brain fog. I open Instagram, I'll go on there just to send someone a message, and then I'll look at a reel and I'll be like, oh, that's funny. And I scroll it, just nature. So scroll, look at another reel. And then I'll have to catch myself after 5 and I'll be like, yo, we came here for something else. And then I'll sit there and be like, what was I even here for? And that's how it gets you. That's what I mean. That's how good the algorithm, it keeps your attention. That's what this is all about. It's creating a model that is good enough at keeping your attention. Because when they have your attention, then they can just start making subtle changes. They can throw in some other reels. It's a real thing. It happens. When people have your attention, they can influence you. And there is a notable track record of a history of doing this. There was a cult, I'll put the name up, I forget the name of the cult. There was a cult in the 70s and 80s. The best way that they realized they could recruit it is by taking the young, attractive female members of that cult and sending them to men's houses to sleep with them. And then afterwards, they would invite them to the cult meetings. And it was a very effective strategy. I think there was thousands of members. I'll put the count up, but there was thousands of members that they got like this. There was tons of people that they got like this. And I'm not saying that, oh yeah, no, they're trying to seduce you, but I'm saying when people have your attention, it is a very dangerous thing. Because when you're looking at one thing, you're looking at what they want you to look, they can be like, here's this other thing. Here's this other thing. And it kind of goes back to the whole pipeline thing where slowly they can build you and push you in a different direction and be like, look at this. Look at this. You got to think about how many hours people are glued to their phones nowadays. Not everyone, but I'm saying as a whole, as a society, haven't you noticed a lot more? As again, especially even older people. They used to bash young people for doing that. And now it's gotten to a point where even older people, this happens. They want you to be in your own little bubble. They want you to be so overstimulated, overwhelmed, you don't look any further than what they're showing you. Why do they not want you to look any further? Because they don't want you to look behind the curtains. What's the curtains? The fact that they're building even more data centers. Every few months, I would see a story about a data center. Oh, it's being built here. It's affecting these people. I'm sure you've got an ad of showing the black water coming out of the spigot for AI data center. But it keeps getting swept up because, again, the news feed as it is, there's stuff happening all the time. There's this, there's that. There's so much content and there's so much news. You lose track of the things that are going on in the background. Like Kevin O'Leary's 40,000 acre AI data center that he wants to put smack middle in Utah. That's what I mean. Why are all these rich people going into this? Why are these corporations building these data centers? Everyone's building these. It's because it's going to make them money. They can market to you. They can sell to you. They can pre-deny you on stuff. And they can influence you. That's what they want. That is what this is all about. That's why they keep doing it. Because yeah, it's not making money right now, but it's going to make them money when they get it down accurately, when they scrape enough data, when they refine these models enough. They're trying to brute force the solution right now. They're trying to make a tool that is super effective against all of us, against our attentions, against what's going on in the world, the different happenings. And that's why they're trying to distract you from, oh yeah, by the way, Lake Tahoe, they're going to lose their electricity pretty soon. Why? Because they keep building data centers in Nevada, and that ended up, and Lake Tahoe gets their power from Nevada, and they got in a disagreement, and basically the electric company said, we're just going to pack up shop. They're leaving the infrastructure there, but pretty soon they're not going to have any power. That's what's going on here. In all of this, and before you go, look, the AI thing, that's one thing. All of this is really crazy, and the AI is not a new thing. The whole point of them wanting to distract you and wanting to hold your attention is the oldest trick in the book. They are trying to get you to look a different direction so that they can really just do whatever they want and you don't even notice. It is the people with wealth and influence that control the narrative. And they often do that by misrepresenting reality and using it to hide the shady shit that they're doing and benefit themselves. And I got examples for you. My first example is the Luddites. You probably heard that term before. It's a term that means, this person, they're anti-technology, they just don't care about growth, they want to go live in the dark ages. No, the term Luddite refers to a man named Ned Ludd, and he got attention. I don't know if it was a real story, but the whole premise is that so during the Industrial Revolution, when they were doing factories, I don't know if you realize this, the factories were horrible. They were putting children, they were working children like as young as they could possibly. They were making them go in the machine. It was horrible. People were dying, getting maimed, mauled, injured. And the factory owners were sitting there going, not giving a single fuck what happened to those people. And Ned Ludd got notability during this time because he is said to have broken a couple of machines. The Luddites themselves were really what you would call the precursor to a union. They were the workers who were getting screwed. And I mean screwed, it ain't even like today. People make fun of unions. There's a reason we have unions today. It is because of the awful stuff they were doing behind. Now, I'm not saying unions themselves are not susceptible to corruption, but the reason they were created is because they were doing this stuff. And the Luddites, basically, one of their principles was they realized that if you break the machines, it is a very effective tool to get the factory owner to listen to you. You say, I'm going to break your shit. If you break their shit randomly, then if they know that you're liable to do that, they're maybe a little more likely to listen to you. And so they were essentially trying to fight for better conditions. And what happened? The term that they got painted as hating technology and wanting to live in the dark ages. And as a result, the term Luddite has now been used as against people who are considered anti-technology. Oh, you're a Luddite. You're just a heathen who wants to live in the dark ages. And it totally they don't even use it anymore to look at the historical context of, no, these people were being misused. They were being abused and just used for their resources. And I feel like today, especially, that term is used against people who also have similarly valid concerns about the rapid rise of technology. And now we're using a 150-year-old term, which has, again, been misrepresented throughout history, and being like, nah, you're a Luddite, you don't care about tech. One of the things as Luddites started coming, there was a phase of Luddite coming back, especially when we had the big tech boom of the 90s and 2000s. And even today, I've heard it a few times before. And it's a gross misuse of the word. My next example, the South. See, one of the things with the Civil War is, right, when they wanted to make black people count as human beings, which is, I know, a very nuanced topic for some people. They wanted black people to count as human beings, you know, give them rights and stuff instead of treating them like property. You know what happened? By the way, if you're not aware, majority of the white people in the South were actually quite poor. They were sharecroppers, you know, they didn't have a lot of money. They were quite poor themselves. And really, it was a few white people who were super rich, who had the plantations, who owned thousands of slaves. And plantation owners, they want to give up their slaves. Free labor. You know, free labor, that's like one of the biggest business expenses gone. Free labor. You literally have them and they multiply. And so, the rich white people went down to the poor white people and like, yeah, you know, if the North succeeds in making black people count as human beings, they gonna take your job. Legitimately, that was the play. They're like, hey, if they take it, hey, if they count as citizens, then, you know, we're gonna have to pay them a wage, and, you know, we can't hire you as much, or they can come for your job because now they can go anywhere. And so as a result, they essentially gaslit the poor white people into not only fighting a war, not only fighting a whole war, which they lost, but after the Reconstruction period ended, it was that mentality of, oh, the black people, they're bad, they're stupid, they're going to come take our jobs. That fear then manifested into hatred. And that's why we still have the Klan today. Because a bunch of rich white Southerners didn't want to give up their free labor. And now we still are feeling the after effects centuries later. Over nothing. Over some people who didn't want to give up the stuff that they were doing, who didn't want to actually pay, who could not stand that. My last example is the California Gold Rush. If you're not aware of the California Gold Rush, it's in, there's two mass migrations. I believe the first one was in 1848. It was a smaller. The big one was in 1849 when news of the gold went huge across the U.S. And people from all over were packing their kids up and heading over because they're like, gold? We can just find gold in those hills? And so they all came over, and they were, you know, the thing is that they sold this not only to people who had money and influence, but also just the normal person. The normal person, like, you know, it's kind of like when people started making money on YouTube and then everyone wanted to be a YouTuber type of deal. So they all come over looking for gold. They come over, and one of the things that would happen, these people would come in, they come into the general store. General store owner is like, hey, you new to town, bud? Look at this. You have a giant jar of gold. You're like, look at this, man. This is real gold I just got last week. And the people come in town, we go, I can do that? And so, you know what they do? They go to the store owner, they buy equipment, they buy the pans, and then they go out. Majority of the gold that was got in California wasn't even got from panning. You were very lucky to make any sort of money from that. Most of the gold here was actually hydraulically mined. They used hoses, they used dredgers, and they just destroyed the California environment. And while that's going on, they displaced thousands of natives and Spaniards who had been here for hundreds of years. Right, the Spaniards had been here for several hundred years, and the natives before, thousands of years before that. And they removed these people from the land, sometimes violently, sometimes very violently, destroyed the environment, Meanwhile, the people who got sold on all the you can pan gold out, they did not make their money back. And you see the history of a lot of these people ended up transitioning to other businesses, going into trade. And in the process, it displaced so many people and caused so much destruction to this beautiful place known as California. You know, Northern California is quite pretty. You should visit sometimes. But that's my point. That's the history. The real people who made money were the merchants. Because that giant big jar of gold was usually pyrite. Or it was gold that they had made from selling so much supplies, land, whatever have you, right? That's the game. That's what's going on here. They want you to look one direction, and while you're looking at someone else, hating them, displacing them, doing whatever, they're in your back pocket making money and getting you to be their lapdogs while they sit there and reap all the rewards. That's what's going on right now. That's what's going on in this world. And so now I want to introduce you not introduce, but I want to explain something. When we go into the day, I know a lot of people, they want to be like, oh, there's a secret cabal of people running the world. There's a group of people colluding together. Could be true, who knows? The real thing is here, it's human behavior. It is what these people are doing. They are lying and manipulating you. They're saying one thing and doing another. They want you to look one direction, they're doing another. These people, it's the behaviors, it's the actions, it's the distractions. They are manipulating you. And they don't want you to realize that they're human and that they can be a liar, that they can be a manipulator, that they can actually be evil and have bad intentions. They want to sell themselves. No, I wouldn't do that. I'm an upstanding businessman. I've been with the community for years. How many times have we seen stories recently of people who have been upstanding people for years, decades, and then you turn out they were just the worst person behind the back? See what just came out with Cesar Chavez recently, or Martin Luther King. And I'm not saying that they didn't do anything good, but there was bad shit in their past that was hidden. And it happens with everyone. It doesn't matter the race, religion, anything. To think that one group is immune and the other group is not, to think one man is immune and another is not, that's bullshit. Everyone is immune to the evils, or everyone is susceptible to the evils in this world, to the sins, to the greed, to the lust. And they want to lie to you and be like, nah, not me. Which brings me to my point. You need to look at the actions of these individuals. You need to look at what they're actually doing. Right? Not what they say they're doing. Not what they want you to see what they're doing. But looking at what's behind the scenes, what's actually going on. Look at the news stories, the track record, the history. Because pretty quickly you can see you're not a good person. You're not doing good things. That's what's going on here. Is the belief, the lie that, oh, it couldn't be me, man. Couldn't be this person. It absolutely could. And honestly, more often than not, the more people are defensive about, nah, I wouldn't do that. I'm a good person. The more often it seems to be true, especially as of recently. And the reason they want this AI, the reason they want these tools, the reason that they keep buying up all these companies and everything and using this vast amount of wealth going on here is because people are starting to catch on. People are starting to understand you can't keep lying to us, man. You can't keep distracting us. And so now, like, even the term pattern recognition, right? Which is a real term Doesn't have to be a racist dog whistle. People have taken that term and turned it into a racist dog whistle because they don't want you to see real patterns going on. They don't want you to see what they're doing. They want you to go look at some other group. They want to delude the fact that repeated bad behavior is usually indicative of a not great person. They want you to go look at someone else's bad actions, go look at what this person's doing, go look at what these people are doing. What about what you're doing? What are you up to in the background? What's going on? And that's also why I wanna introduce you. Not really introduce, but go over five people. I have 5 gentlemen for you, and the companies that they influence / control, they're in that world. First off, we have Jeff Bezos. We brought him up earlier. Obviously there's Amazon. Not sure if you also know, he also has Twitch, the gaming streaming service. He also has the Wall Street Journal. He also has Amazon Web Services, which are like, okay, so what's a branch of Amazon? Amazon Web Services is one of the big 3 internet providers now. I think it's Google, AWS, which is the Amazon Web Service, and I forget the other one. But you remember last year how we had all those websites breaking randomly last year? Well, about I don't know if it's a third, but like nearly that much of all the web pages online currently go through this service. And last year he had that giant crash. That's how many websites is actually. I'm trying to show you the spheres of influence these people have. Elon Musk, he's got Twitter, he's got Tesla, he's got SpaceX, he's also got his own AI company. He's got Grok. Or I guess the banner company is called XAI. Peter Thiel, who we've talked about, he's a venture capitalist. He has a lot of money in a lot of different places. And he also has Palantir. Again, and these are just some. I'm sure there's more. I'm sure there's more companies that they're here. I'll try and list as many or as many big ones as I'm just trying to make an example here. Mark Zuckerberg, right? Meta, that's Facebook, Instagram. And, recently, I believe, I'll put up on the screen, I believe he just got found liable for his algorithm actually being addictive, or the company's algorithm being addictive, actually being harmful to children, which is my point about these algorithms they're trying to make. And last person I want to bring up, Larry Ellison, the guy who was in Iron Man, which is crazy. He made a cameo on Iron Man, but he owns Oracle. If you've never heard of Oracle, Oracle is one of the biggest software companies in the world. If you've heard of Oracle Stadium for the Golden Lakers, that Oracle. Oracle is also the company that just bought out the server space for TikTok, the US server space. He owns that. He also is in with his son, David Ellison, with Paramount Skydance, which is a huge media company, right? Paramount, Paramount Plus, all of those shows, all that content. And also, I believe Skydance is, I believe local news. I'll put it up on screen what Skydance is. But that's my point. Giant media company. And you know what all 5 of these men have in common? They're all running in the same circle as the guy who signed off in 2017 on the rule that got rid of our data privacy rights, Donald Trump. They are all running around with him. They are all, and I'm not accusing them a collusion. But I'm saying, look who's at the top. Look who's around the guy at the top. Look at what's actually going on here. Look at how much 5 people own of the U.S. corporations in influence. And right now, with all this craziness going around, they're trying to distract us all with the news, with politics, what's going on in the world. They're trying to keep us from the fact that not only are they trying to build a tool that's good enough to keep us in our places, but they're also trying to buy up more corporations and trying to do more stuff. They're trying to buy more influence because they're trying to build a reality that we don't want it, but they want. They want the control. They want what's going on in the world. They have so much and they want to take more. And that's why we need to come together as a population, as a people. Doesn't matter about race, religion, gender, political stance, any of that. We have to come together as people, as neighbors, as communities. Because this doesn't have to be like Watch Dogs. It doesn't have to be the cyberpunk dystopia. It doesn't have to be whatever these people want for us. We can band together and really look at the election this year. We can look at what's going on in our world and our community. And we can actually be attentive. We can actually do research. We can actually look into who we are putting into power. And we can put the right people into power. We can vote for the right things. We can actually care to take. I know life is so busy and so complicated sometimes. And there's so much that goes on in the world. But just taking those few extra minutes to really button down and just look at what's actually going on and who does what they say and who says one thing goes the other way.